Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the world's best investing podcast. Today, I'm going to be explaining why I believe that AMD is the next trillion-dollar AI giant. You may want to listen to me, well, because I'm up 20x on AMD over the last decade, 20x on Tesla, over 12x on Palantir now, over 6x on Spotify. So I have a solid track record of investing in tech companies that are publicly traded. And I look at this opportunity and I think to myself, wow, this is incredible. And you know what? It's not even that hard to see. What's happening is that analysts insist in comparing this company at face value with NVIDIA. So they say, the question they ask themselves now is, well, how well is AMD performing versus NVIDIA today? And the answer is not visibly so. Maybe only a little bit on the data center AI GPU. So then the answer to the question is AMD worth it or not as an investment? Their answer is AMD sucks. And it's cyclical, right? 2 years ago, they were saying that AMD was going to disrupt NVIDIA rather quickly. And then they've been deflated over the subsequent quarters, as it turns out that AMD has not made instantaneous trillion-dollar progress in the AI space, in 5 minutes, which is really the investment horizon of many professional analysts. And so it's a fundamental mistake to be analyzing AMD like that. What's happening is that AMD has been essentially building a tech roadmap for the past decade and a bit, which is now going to enable them to take on multiple $100 billion AI opportunities simultaneously at a marginal cost. And that's because of the tech they have. And especially this is going to be enabled by the acquisitions that they've been making since 2021. Which incidentally, the acquisitions and some cyclical downturns is what has made AMD's free cash flow per share decline a little bit. But if you look at the graph, if you just go on Seeking Alpha or any of these other platforms, you will see that it's now trending back up. So I believe that this pessimism is going to be cut short at some point in the coming quarters as AMD goes back to printing awesome financials. However, the thing is that if you're a tech investor, and your signal to invest or not is the financials of the last quarter, you are 100% or most likely going to make zero money. Because in technology, by the time value shows up in the income statement, it's too late. And so you need to have an in-depth understanding of technological roadmaps, which is generally, it's not common. And funnily enough, it's not common among professional analysts. So let me explain what I think is going on with AMD. Firstly, it's obvious that AMD data center revenues are exploding. And so per that data alone, this reaction that the market is having with AMD is emotional, it's silly, and I think it's an opportunity to be capitalized on. By the way, none of this is financial advice. I could be getting stuff wrong. I have gotten stuff wrong in the past. But again, as was the case with my last video in which I was talking about HIMSS, I believe this is going to be a spectacular success. So now, even after all this pessimism, I'm up 20x on AMD, and I believe I'm going to be up 100x soon, as I was saying, and even more just because the long-term potential of this roadmap is so huge. So data center revenue actually went up 3x from Q3 2024 to Q4 2024. That is a tremendous performance. This is the fastest product ramp. This is the fastest product ramp ever in AMD history. However, AMD is now trading at the same price roughly where it was 3 or 4 years ago. So again, irrational. But I wouldn't stop there. So I'm talking about this tech roadmap, and it actually gets a little bit more specific. The AMD's MI300X is essentially beating NVIDIA's H200 at inference, and this is happening by a wide margin. There's some data that I'm looking at on the screen here, but generally, if you look for qualitative evidence of this across the board, you will see startups and other companies starting to use this hardware to make inferences. And so if you listen to Jensen Huang, NVIDIA CEO, recently talk about inference, he says it's going to basically go up by 1 billion-fold. Because, look, the world has been obsessed with training AI models, and now what we're going to have is we're going to have to do something useful with whatever models we have. And so per every model that you train, you're going to have 1 billion or billions of inferences. So inference is really going to be the workload where the money is going to move to. And so it's interesting that, and again, here's where people get mistaken. Some people say, well, AMD has an advantage in inference. That is correct. But in order to truly understand the tech roadmap in depth, you need to go a little bit deeper. But before that, let me just remind you something that I told you about in one of my previous videos, which is that Meta is going full on, is betting the house on AMD's MI300X for inference. So Llama 405B runs all live traffic on the MI300X, and you have that video. It's one of my top videos, has one of the most views, so you can go and check it out. But the question really is, well, why is Meta betting on AMD? Well, firstly, you need to understand that for Meta to bet on a tech roadmap, it means that they are doing so for the long term. Because installing all of that hardware and getting all of the software that you need right in order to get the hardware to perform is a very costly thing to do. It takes a lot of time, even when you are dealing with software that makes it quote unquote easy, like NVIDIA. So basically, if you go and review the last AMD's latest AI event, you will see Kevin Salvatore, which is the guy that runs infrastructure at Meta, explaining that they are actually cooperating with AMD on a multi-year roadmap. So this is not just a one-off where Meta runs live traffic on the MI300X for Llama 405B for a little bit. They're planning on doing this for years and years. So this actually tells you something very interesting, which I'm going to be explaining now. Fundamentally, Lisa Su has explained this a number of times. It's not like AMD excels at inference and that's it. What's really happening is that AMD's Chiplet platform, which enabled them to dethrone Intel on the CPU side, enables them to mix and match compute engines at will. And so what this does is, if a new workload emerges, such as the case with inference, AMD is able to combine compute engines in a way that will give you as a customer higher performance per dollar spent than any other alternative. So inference is what's hot now. And so AMD designed the MI300X specifically to cater for inference, but it's actually the traction that we are seeing now with inference is a tactic, meaning they've used their platform they've re-engineered their platform, or they are using their platform to combine compute engines at will so that customers find that AMD gives them an overall performance and total cost of ownership advantage. So Meta is the company that, in my view, allocates capital in the AI space best. So remember that in 2022, the market was demolishing Meta. Firstly, because it thought that Zuck was betting the house on the metaverse, and that wasn't true. Actually, if you dug in at the time, as I did in my deep dive, and you can read it for free on my Substack, which is linked to my profile, Zuckerberg was actually spending most of the capex was going to AI data centers. And what's incredible is that these guys were doing that before the LLM revolution happened. So they had tremendous foresight. And so these are people that I really respect. And when they commit capital to a certain technological roadmap, to me, that's a huge validation. And honestly, if you know anything about Meta, it should be for you too. So the thing with inference is, as I was explaining, the traction there is made possible by AMD's platform. But what happens is, if you think going forward, we are likely to see new AI workloads emerge, meaning that, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, no one in the general public was thinking about inference. But it's very likely that as AI matures over time and it moves from the data center to the edge, etc., and more things happen, we are going to see new types of AI workloads emerge, and they are going to require specific chip configurations that ultimately enable customers to achieve higher levels of performance for less. That is where AMD's platform is going to excel, in that whatever AI workload emerges over time, AMD's platform is going to enable them to capitalize on that quicker than competitors. And so the traction with Meta's bet on the MI300X, I believe, is really just the beginning. Sorry, getting a call now. So if you understand what that means that basically AMD's revenue is likely to grow exponentially it's doing so now with data centers, but that is being muted in the financials by the cyclical downturn of the gaming and the embedded businesses. But then once that is done, the financials are likely to look a lot better because data center revenue is going to continue exploding. Sorry, just a second. Estoy haciendo un vídeo, macho. Sí, ya lo he puesto. Sorry, guys. So yeah, I think revenue is going to grow exponentially and margins are going to go up because this technology, this platform enables AMD to capitalize on AI workloads as they emerge with a cost advantage, essentially. It's not visible in the financials yet, but if you look at these anecdotes, and by the way, you can check it out on my last thread that I did about AMD on X, look at Kevin Salvatore and listen closely to what he is saying. He's basically saying that AMD was the best option for them to run inference at scale. This is Meta. This is the company. And if you dig deep into Meta's financial results over the past few quarters, you will see that AI is making money for these people. It's not like they're using AI for whatever it is, just to say that they do AI. AI is making money for them. And so lots of respect for Meta. They are using AMD, tremendous validation. And I believe it's a little instance of the big future that's coming up ahead for AMD. Now, the other thing that's misunderstood, and this feeds back to the idea of AMD's platform allowing them to take on various opportunities. AMD bought Xilinx in the year 2020, and Xilinx was and still is the leader in the FPGA market by a wide margin. The runner-up was Altera, which Intel acquired in 2018. Intel hasn't done anything with Altera since, and so basically the only people that can do FPGAs at scale is AMD. FPGA stands for Field Programmable Gate Array, and these are basically chips that can reconfigure themselves on the go. Why is that interesting? Well, because if you want to run a neural network at the edge, so on a device, the best way to do so efficiently without minimizing the amount of energy required and therefore having the device not overheat is basically having a chip that changes shape and basically acquires the shape of the neural network and then runs the inference. So FPGAs can do that. No other kind of chip can. AMD has the leading technology, and guess what? They can plug FPGAs anywhere they want to in order to infuse any chip with AI capabilities. So if you look at the past few quarters, AMD's client business segment, so the business which is about basically selling laptops and computers and stuff, is exploding too. It's growing exponentially. And this has been enabled by them plugging FPGAs onto CPUs, which essentially gives laptops AI capabilities. That shows you how this idea about AMD being able to capitalize on multiple AI workloads or opportunities more broadly at a marginal cost because of the platform is real. So they are taking on the whole AI PC opportunity by simply slapping FPGAs on CPUs. That is a huge deal. And that is something, by the way, I've never heard any professional analyst talk about this. All they talk about, and by the way, recently it's only bad news, is, well, we are downgrading AMD because we are concerned about competitive pressures. Well, you don't really understand the competitive environment if you aren't talking about the versatility of chiplets, how that enables them to take on multiple workloads simultaneously at a marginal cost. And you certainly don't understand the competitive environment if you're not talking about FPGAs and how the growth of the AI PC business validates the idea that they can take on multiple AI opportunities at the same time at a marginal cost. It's happening now, right? So we have Meta betting on the technology. We have data center revenues growing exponentially. And then we have the client business growing exponentially too, driven by this property of the platform that I'm explaining. No one's really talking about this. All they're doing is downgrading AMD, and people sell AMD as soon as there's a little bit of bad news with tariffs, etc., which no one really knows how it's going to end. But I'll tell you what, when technology works, it's perpendicular to the macroeconomy. The macroeconomy can get as bad as it wants, but essentially, if you provide more performance per dollar spent, you're going to win. And that's what AMD is doing here. We have the qualitative evidence. We even begin to see it in the financials because, as I was saying, of course, well, in the aggregate, revenue isn't growing spectacularly. But if you look at those two segments, data center and client, it shows that the platform is working. So that's very interesting. Now, consider this. Talking about the idea of this technology enabling AMD to take on various opportunities at the same time, yes, slapping FPGAs on CPUs is enabling them to sell lots of AI PCs. So that business is working well. But eventually, AI will go beyond the data center and will go onto the edge. AI PCs are an example of AI moving onto the edge. They are moving onto devices, laptops, etc. But eventually, we're going to have satellites, fridges, cars. Everything will be running neural networks. Everything will be smart. So some quarters ago, AMD announced that SpaceX's Gen 2 satellites are going to be powered by AMD's FPGA technology. So it's interesting that, yes, FPGAs are commonly used in space, so that perhaps it's not quite a validation of the edge thesis, but it is a validation of them using that technology into vastly different end applications, which is one, AI PCs and satellites. So it shows you how with the same tech, they can address multiple opportunities at the same time. But then broadly taking a step back, yes, AI will make its way into satellites. Yes, AI will make its way into any appliance in the house. And so guess who has the technology to power that? Well, it's AMD. Altera would have the technology, but it's buried deep within Intel, and Intel can't do anything with it. So actually, this gives AMD access to a $100 billion uncontested AI business. Of course, you can't see that in the financials yet. But as I was saying, if you dig deep into the details, you will see that the roadmap is working. It enables AMD to take on various huge businesses at the same time, right? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope that you understand the power of AMD's platform now. And just to cap this off, I wanted to talk about free cash flow per share. I've said many times in my videos how ultimately stock prices track free cash flow per share levels over the long term. And that obviously makes a lot of sense because the value of a share is determined by how much cash it could pay you if the company decided to issue dividends. And that is ultimately expressed. So the proxy for that is how much free cash flow do you get per share? It's very simple. If a share produces zero free cash flow, then it's worth zero. And obviously the relationship is never really one-to-one because the market is making inferences at all times about how much free cash flow per share the business is likely to print over the over the coming 6 months. So the market is forward-looking. But, excuse me, it's that hay fever. If you look at AMD's free cash flow per share, since 2021, it's been declining because of the investments the company has been making. So annoying. I'm going to disconnect my iPhone from my computer. Sorry, guys. It's been going down, right? Now it's going back up, and AMD is priced at a price-to-sales ratio of 5.44. Of course, as I was saying, well, firstly, free cash flow per share going back up shows you that we are, obviously it's inflected from the lows in 2023. That's ultimately what dictates how a market feels about a company. It's very hard for a company to be growing its free cash flow per share fast and for the market to be pessimistic about it. So this pessimism has broadly been tracking the decline that we've seen, but now it's inflecting back up. So just on that metric alone, I think much, much better times are coming for AMD stock. Now, AMD is trading at now something like 5.4 times sales, which means it's basically trading as a whatever kind of growth company. But the truth is that, and this is very evident, AMD is really the only company after NVIDIA that's capable of satisfying the insatiable demand for AI compute. Naturally, people have forgotten about AI for the past 2 months because it's now all about tariffs with India, China, etc. I couldn't care less. If you look at what people are doing with their phones, they are using ChatGPT all the time. And my, is this thing getting smart? It's weird. I was talking to it yesterday and it reminded me something that I said to it early in the morning. And I was like, wow, this thing is really getting to know me. Point is, AI is picking up, huge demand for compute. We are only going to have exponentially more demand for compute a decade or a decade and a half from now, 2 decades, etc. This is the only company after NVIDIA that can provide. And guess what? There's going to be all kinds of there's going to be demand for all kinds of AI compute. And so that array of demand types is going to get much broader. And that is what the market is misunderstanding here. But again, as I was saying, if you understand AMD in depth, you can already see that the roadmap is working. It's printing financials. And as that continues growing exponentially, so data center and client, and then we have gaming and embedded turn back around, then the financials are going to look a lot better. And, I think that what we're going to see in the next 5 years broadly is, one, people are not going to understand what's happened in the world, because AI is going to be all over the place and it's going to be so strange and incredible and hopefully safe, right? Because this thing, it could be weird, but all of that is going to drive so much demand for compute. We've seen that over the past decade. We went through the whole mobile thing. The world is just compute now. It's whoever has the most compute power wins. So, as I was saying, this is not financial advice, but my view is that AMD's roadmap is tremendous. It's misunderstood. Analysts are looking in the wrong place, and I remain long this company. Obviously, I'm up 20x now, as I was saying. I believe this is going to be my first 100x investment ever. Tesla's right up there competing for that spot. I have a feeling this is going to happen earlier, but I may be mistaken. So guys, thank you very much for joining me today. As always, if you enjoyed this update, could you please share this with one friend? These deep dives are for free, and so the only way this grows is with your help. So thank you very much in advance. Take care, and until next time.